Hey there, welcome back to our channel. Today's video is going to take us on a journey through a painful chapter in American history. It's a topic that deserves our utmost attention and empathy as we explore the top 10 ways the Jim Crow laws impacted the lives of African Americans. These laws were designed to enforce racial segregation and discrimination, creating layers of oppression that resulted in immense suffering and a deep sense of injustice. So, grab your popcorn, but remember, the stories we're about to share are not for entertainment purposes. Instead, they serve as a reminder of the resilience and strength African Americans displayed in the face of unimaginable adversity. 1. Educational segregation. Let's begin by acknowledging the great injustice inflicted upon African American children through educational segregation. Picture this: young minds thirsting for knowledge, but barred from accessing quality education. Public schools were strictly segregated, with African American children receiving fewer resources, outdated textbooks, and attending dilapidated facilities. The impact? A generation denied equal opportunities and subjected to a perpetual cycle of disadvantage. 2. Voting restrictions. The Jim Crow laws imposed ruthless voting restrictions on African Americans, stripping away their fundamental right to engage in the democratic process. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and other discriminatory measures were deployed to suppress their political voices. Imagine being eager to shape the future, yet being constantly denied the chance to be heard. African Americans were robbed of their political power and silenced in the democratic arena. 3. Public accommodations. Our next point focuses on the humiliation and indignity African Americans endured due to the segregation of public accommodations. Picture yourself parched on a scorching summer day, only to find "whites only" signs on water fountains. Imagine searching for a place to rest and finding colored sections on buses or trains. Such segregation was a constant reminder of their perceived inferiority and a stark manifestation of the deeply rooted racism that thrived during this era. 4. Economic oppression. Let's shine a light on the economic oppression that African Americans faced under the Jim Crow laws. Discrimination didn't stop at education or public facilities, it seeped into the economic realm as well. Limited access to employment opportunities, wage disparities, and unfair lending practices served as barriers to their economic progress. The resulting cycle of poverty and limited upward mobility constrained African American communities, denying them the chance to overcome systemic discrimination. 5. Lynchings and violence. Brace yourselves for a painful reality. The Jim Crow era witnessed an alarming increase in racial violence and acts of terror against African Americans. Lynchings, fueled by a culture of hatred and oppression, became a terrifying symbol of racial dominance. Families torn apart, lives cut short, and communities living in constant fear. These violent acts were meant to suppress any attempts at resistance, suffocating hope under a suffocating cloud of terror. 6. Land ownership restrictions. Let's discuss how the Jim Crow laws curtailed African Americans' ability to own land and build generational wealth. Through discriminatory practices like redlining and unfair lending practices, African Americans were excluded from homeownership and access to desirable neighborhoods. Denied the chance to accumulate wealth, they were robbed of the means to provide a solid foundation for their families, further perpetuating the cycle of inequality. 7. Employment discrimination. African Americans faced widespread employment discrimination, limiting their access to higher-paying jobs and trapping them in low-wage, menial labor. Discrimination in hiring practices and workplace segregation left African Americans with limited career options and stifled their economic progress. They persevered amidst countless barriers, demonstrating immense resilience in the face of systemic discrimination. 8. Social stigma and segregation. The legacy of the Jim Crow laws imposed a deep social stigma and a pervasive sense of segregation upon African American communities. From everyday interactions to social gatherings, they were subjected to constant racial humiliation, constantly reminded of their perceived inferiority. This psychological burden inflicted wounds that transcended generations, with healing still an ongoing process. 9. Restricted access to healthcare. The restrictions imposed by the Jim Crow laws extended even into access to healthcare services. Segregated hospitals and clinics provided subpar medical care to African Americans compared to their white counterparts. This led to higher mortality rates and limited access to quality health care, exacerbating health disparities that continue to persist today. 10. Psychological impact. Lastly, we must comprehend the deep psychological wounds inflicted by the Jim Crow laws on African Americans. The constant humiliation, fear, and systemic oppression subjected them to psychological trauma that reverberated through generations. It is through empathy, acknowledgement, and understanding that we can address these painful scars and work towards healing and racial justice. There you have it, the top 10 ways the Jim Crow laws impacted the lives of African Americans. It is crucial that we confront this painful history with empathy, acknowledging the profound suffering African Americans endured. We must remember the strength, resilience, and unwavering determination they exhibited in the face of unimaginable hardships. Let's actively work towards creating a more inclusive and just society, ensuring that the dark days of the Jim Crow era never resurface. If you found this video valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with others. Thank you for joining us on this journey of reflection and understanding.